Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome here in our Spiritist Center. We are very happy to be here this morning, beautiful Sunday morning with nice temperature. So we are glad that we are here today. This is our Sunday Gospel that we have every last Sunday of the month. It's from 10 a.m. to 11. So we intend to have more gospels in English in Bezerra de Menezes, and we are very fortunate to have this house here. So thank you for being here this morning. Let's start. We always do, we read a book called Happy Life. And the message today is: greet your day with a prayer of gratitude. You are alive. While there is life, the opportunities to grow and to be happy multiply. Each day is a new blessing from God, a proof of His love to you. As the hours pass, cultivate optimism and well-being. Consider work the best way to progress. Those who do not work are morally and spiritually paralyzed. The person who is not devoted to the liberating action of work becomes a drag of the economy and the society. Work is life. Patience is a virtue which will help you acquire the good of the body, soul, and society. It teaches us how to wait when we cannot immediately get what we want. Never be irritated. Patience will help you overcome everything. Grant your fellow beings the same rights and favors that you expect from them. Selfishness is an illness that poisons the soul. The friend at your side yearns for the same spaces to live as you do. Remember, do not deny him the opportunity. Learn to share what is yours. And with these messages in our minds, we invite everybody to pray together. We always start our works with a prayer that give us the strength, and let's start then. Everybody, the ones that wants to close your eyes, it's fine. If you don't want to close your eyes, it's also fine. Praying is something very unique for each of us that connects us with our good spirits, with God, with our brother Jesus. So let's elevate our thoughts to God first of everything, our Creator, our Father, saying thank you, Father, for this life we have today, the numerous opportunities that we have every single minute of our lives. May we get the strength from you, Father, to overcome everything that's we have difficulties in our lives. We also thank Jesus, our dear brother, that brought us this gospel that inspires us, that teaches us the way and the love. May we be with Jesus always. And Bezerra de Menezes and all the spirits that support this house of love. That what we listen here today has a meaningful actions in our lives. may we receive these informations and apply them in our homes. And once again, we thank God for being here today. So be it. And today we have the gospel with our dear friend Marcos Rossi. And welcome, Marcos. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and very happy to be here one more Sunday, and happy to be to see so many new and familiar faces. So we hope to have a good conversation today, and the subject, the chapter 13, is entitled "Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing." And I hope that by the end of this conversation, we will have a better understanding of what that means. And I think the first thing that I would like to say to start is that we have a theme, we have a motto in Spiritism that says, without charity, there's no salvation, right? And I think this is the perfect opener for this conversation today, because essentially what we're going to be talking about is charity. And in many ways, we don't fully understand the depth of this action or this way of being, I would say, that entitles being charitable as a person or as a spirit. So when we speak about charity, it's almost, I think, for me at least, the first thing that comes to mind is one apostle in specific, right? It's always important to differentiate disciples and apostles, right? The disciples of Jesus were those 12 that we all know, and after they came knowledgeable and prepared by Jesus to follow his teachings and, spread his word, they became apostles. But not all apostles were disciples, right? And one in specific, after he became, he was touched by Jesus specifically in a very unique event. He created the habit of traveling around, spreading the word of Jesus. And he would found communities, so-called churches, and he would, go to the next town. And as he would go to the next town, he would write letters to those previous communities to provide guidance and sometimes call their attention to things that they were not probably doing as well as they could be, right? And I think Pedro might know who I'm talking about. Pedro? Who is it? Yeah, that's my boy. That's my boy. So we're talking about St. Paul. And it's not changing pages. Let's try again. All right, so now it's working. All right, so yeah, we're talking about Paul. And one letter in a specific that he wrote to a city called Corinth in Greece, right, is very focused. One part of the letter is very focused on charity. And the fact is that that community was getting distracted in many senses, right? They were worried about prophesizing. They were worried about speaking in tongues. They were worried about disputing amongst themselves who knew more, right, about Jesus and about Jesus' teachings. So Paul thought, these guys are kind of losing their way. They're getting distracted. Let me write them a letter and bring them back to the meaning of the message of Jesus. So he said to them, and you might know this passage, right? If I were to speak in the language of man or of angels, yet not have charity, I would be like a clanging bell or a crashing cymbal. And if I have prophecy and learn every mystery and obtain all knowledge and possess all faith, so that I could move mountains, yet not have charity, then I'm nothing. And if I distribute all my goods in order to feed the poor, and if I hand over my body to be burned, yet not have charity, it offers me nothing. Charity is patient, is kind. Charity does not envy, does not act wrongly, is not inflated. Charity is not ambitious, does not seek for itself, is not provoked to anger, devises no evil. Charity does not rejoice over iniquity, but rejoices in truth. Charity suffers all, believes all, hopes all, endures all. Charity is never torn away, even if prophecies pass away, or languages cease, or knowledge is destroyed. For now, these three continue: faith, hope, and charity, and the greatest of these is charity. I believe many of you might have contact with this passage using a different word instead of charity. Anybody? Right? Love, correct. So why do we have two translations? One using charity and the other using love. The original word used here was agape, because this letter was written in Greek, right? And agape meant a different kind of love. It's not the erotic love, it's not the family love, it's the love for our neighbors, it's love to the people that surround us. It's an attitude more than anything, right? But it was initially translated as charity, but charity through time ended up getting a meaning of donations. But the meaning was so much more powerful that in the 20th century, they decided to have a second translation using the word love to replace charity. So that's why you're going to find two translations, right? But the meaning, the essential meaning here is agape, right? It's the love that transcends family, transcends loving a couple, right? It's the love toward our neighbors. So when we speak about charity, one of the things that we can see in this chapter is that behind every religious teaching, when it goes towards this kind of and again, it's not working. Is there anything that we can do to make this thing work? There you go. So park there for a moment. So in every religion, there are two things that are essential, right? Every moral possible is containing these two precepts. Let us love one another, and do to others what we would like to be done to ourselves. And the golden rule has the negative version as well, right? Don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. If we take those two things, right, it's kind of like something that is ingrained in us, something that God gave us, which is our conscience, right? We have a conscience that is always telling us what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is not good, what helps somebody, what does not help somebody, what's selfish is not selfish. And the essential idea is that we give or we do things without expecting anything in return. And as we think about that, we have to think that everybody that is around us in a spiritual way is a brother, a sister, a past parent, a past son, right? So anybody that we are rejecting, anybody that we are selective in terms of giving them charity, giving them love, we are forgetting this golden rule that this person that we are rejecting could be very well a former relative, a former person of my family, right? Because spiritually speaking, we are all the same family, right? Now, there is one specific passage in the Bible that is, I like to call it the most important sermon of all times, right? And we're talking about the Sermon of the Mount. So in this chapter, there are four gospel passages that are explored, and we're going to go over all of them. So in the Sermon of the Mount, Jesus provides to us a very specific direction or directive on how to do charity. So let's learn this. First of all, he says, be careful not to do your good works before men in order to be seen by them. Otherwise, you will not receive recompense from your Father in heaven. So the principle there is that if you are getting this recognition, right, from men, from people, you already got your reward. So God owes you nothing now. So whenever you give alms, do not sound the trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues, in order to be praised by men. Whenever you give, do not let your left hand know what the right hand is doing. So that's what Jesus is communicating here, right? So it's kind of like a figure of speech. Do not let the other hand know what you're doing. So the essence here is, don't try to get recognition here. Don't try to get recognition from the ones around you. Don't do charity and then take a selfie, right, and put it on social media. Because then you're going to get the recognition you want, but not the recognition from above. Now, picture this. Jesus just finishes this preaching at the mountain, and when he comes down, right, and both passages are in the Gospel of Matthew, he comes down the mount, and a leper approaches him, right, and he gives Jesus a chance to do charitable work right there, right? He says, Lord, if you will, you can heal me. Jesus reached out to him, touched him. Was it common for people to touch lepers in that time? So much was his power and trust, right, and faith, that he touched him and said, I will be healed. But then he provides a very interesting guidance to this guy, right? He says, do not tell anyone about this. Do not tell anyone about this. And then he says something very weird that doesn't make much sense to us, right? Show yourself to the priests and offer the gift prescribed by Moses. So before we even go ahead and talk about these two instructions or the two passages in detail, let's understand what this gift by Moses means, right? So there is one of the 5 books from Moses, the Leviticus, provides a bunch of guidances and rules to be followed. And one of these rules was about purification when you get healed, right? So one of the mandates for you to be accepted back into society and be allowed to go to synagogue was that you, once healed, would have to present yourself beyond the priest and say, I'm healed. Check me out. And then there were a few rituals they would have to do. They would have to offer 2 birds, one dead and one alive, things that, it's from old Jews. And they would have to wash clothes, shave, take a shower, and then do some sacrifices. And that would deem them clean to go back to synagogue and have a normal life. Jesus, being a profound, a deep knowing of the scriptures, knew that only healing that guy was not complete. He would still have to go and show himself to the priests in order to be considered fully healed. Now let's see what Kardec brings to us about these 2 passages, right? The first thing is that there's great merit in hiding your hand when you're doing good deeds, right? It almost asks us to be beyond human, right? He uses the word above humanity to renounce the satisfaction that seeks to be witnessed by others and wait for God's approval. And then he goes further and says, those who prefer the human attention, those who prefer the attention of those around them, show that they have more faith in those than in God. It even could say or suggest that you have no faith at all, because you're seeking to be observed and to be noted and to be recognized by the ones around you. Are also those that hope that the beneficiary of your acts will shout and tell the world the things that you did, right? Oh, look, Marcos did this to me. Marcos did that to me. Marcos is awesome. Marcos is good. And Marcos is all happy now. How cruel is that, right? We're actually doing things and saying, hey, go ahead and tell around what I did. Trying to get, again, recognition from people around you. Well, if you do that and you get that reward, that's all you get. That's the reward. And you can expect nothing from God. We already got the reward here. There are also those who make those benefits weigh heavily on the people that are helped. Look, I helped you, but it was such a sacrifice. I had to go beyond my time. I had to work farther. I had to do this. I had to do that. And you're making that person feel bad about the charity that you just did. And that completely loses the effect. Actually, Kardec uses the word, the good they did is deplored. Right? He also says that kindness without ostentation has two merits. The material thing that you just did or gave, but also there is a moral charity that you're doing. So when you give without ostentation, without trying to show off, without appearing, right, there is a material charity and there's a moral charity to it as well. You're not bruising the self-esteem of the people that are being helped by you. And there's always, a little bit of pride and malice when we do that, trying to get that kind of recognition, because it's all moved by ego, right? It's our ego speaking. And he uses a very interesting short story to illustrate this that I'm going to share with you guys. So he tells, who's this woman of distinction, dressed in a simple but careful manner, accompanied by a girl also dressed modestly? She enters a squalid-looking house where she's obviously well known because she's greeted respectfully at the door. Where is she going? Well, what matters is that thanks to this woman, these poor children will experience neither cold nor hunger. They will go to school dressed warmly, and their mother's milk will not dry up for the littlest ones. If any of them are ill, no material care will be denied. Then he goes and tells that she asks them neither about their beliefs nor their opinions, for to her all people are brothers and sisters. All are children of God. What is her name? Where does she live? No one knows. Catholics, Jews, Protestants, all bless her. And this part is so important, right? Because this woman is doing charity without asking any background, without asking any faith, without asking any ideology. We're not supposed to be discriminating when we do charity, when we provide love, right? So why does she dress so simply? She does not wish to insult poverty with luxury. So look how deep this empathetic woman is, right? She's going to this humble place, also dressed humbly. Why does her young daughter accompany her? In order to learn how beneficence should be practiced. This truly Christian mother is educating her daughter in the virtues taught by Christ. I think this is probably the only situation where you should be showing what to do, right? To educate your kids, to make sure that they understand the value of that action. And then he finishes this story asking a very interesting question. Is she a spiritist? The answer is, does that matter? We shouldn't be discriminating as well. There's no religion that owns charity. Charity is universal. We all should be working towards charity. Then the third passage that we're going to talk about today is the widow's mite. Right? This interesting story in which Jesus was seated opposite to the offertory box. And he was watching the way in which people dropped their money into it. And noticing that many of the wealthy were giving lots of money, right? having called but then a poor widow came in and put in a very small amount of money. Just 2 small coins. He called his disciples and said, "This poor widow has given more than what all the others have put in the offertory box. They have all given of their abundance, whereas she has given out of her poverty." Everything she had and everything that was left for her to live on. So, of course, that kind of donation has much more value to the eyes of God, right? Now, there's a context behind this conversation as well. Unfortunately, in those days, some Pharisees were known by exploiting widows. So many times the widows were left alone with some money, with some property, and they didn't have the skills to manage it. So they would ask help for the priests, for the Pharisees, would ask for some guidance. And they would many times make them offer more money than necessary, would actually take advantage of their situation. And Jesus thought that this was a betrayal of God's law, because in 2 books, Exodus and Deuteronomy, right, they call for protecting and providing widows. So that's why, again, Jesus, knowing the scriptures so well, he saw there a hypocrisy and contradiction with God's law. And one thing that was very present in Jesus all the time, his concern for vulnerable people of all kinds, right? He was always trying to protect the vulnerable ones. So, given the context, he was not too happy with what he saw. Now, let's see how Kardec helps us understand this passage, right? One of the things that he mentioned, and I think it's very interesting, I think all of us have said this at a given moment in our lives, right? If I had more money, I would donate so much. I would do so much charity. And then, Kardec has always this way of kind of like poking us and saying, are you being a little bit hypocrite here? Because in the end, right, the first thing that you're trying to do is to do some good to yourself first. You're putting a precondition for charity, right? And he doesn't think this is completely disinterested, and I think he's right. So we would be serving to the poor or to the needy the surplus, my excess, right? So that's easy. The charity entails thinking of others before we think about ourselves. So we have to put our neighbor first. So those whose intentions are pure of any personal interest should think of the mite of the poor who give, depriving themselves, first of all. And then he says 2 very interesting things. I think this is very important. We must find within our own work and by using our own strength, intelligence, and talents, the resources we lack to accomplish generous intentions. We are full of resources. We were talking about this in our preparation here, right? One of us is looking for more knowledge. Knowledge is also richness. It's also something that I should be sharing, right? It's also something that I can use to find ways to be generous. The other thing he says is, there are none who, enjoying the full use of their faculties, cannot render some sort of service, provide some consolation, mitigate physical or mental suffering, or do something useful. At the end of this conversation, I'm going to give you many examples of things that we can do. And all he's asking of us is, let's be resourceful, let's be creative. So I don't have money to donate, and I sit and watch television. That's the end of it. There's so much more that we can do. And we will cover that in a minute. Now, the last passage that we will cover today starts with an invitation that Jesus receives to go have dinner in a Pharisee's house. Right? This is a very long passage, and there are so many lessons in it, right? One of them is that Jesus mentions that we shouldn't be looking for the best place in the table. We should be humble, right, and wait to be invited for a good place in the table, because there could be more important people coming. But he goes on, right? He also said to the one who had invited him, to the Pharisee, whenever you give a dinner or a supper, do not invite your friends, your brothers, your relatives, or wealthy neighbors, so that they will invite you in their turn. Whenever you give a banquet, invite the poor, the lame, the maimed, and the blind, and you will be happy, because they have no means of repaying you. For you will be rewarded at the resurrection of the righteous. Having heard these words, one of those who were at the table said to him, happy is he who eats bread in the kingdom of God. So, again, as Jesus did many, many times, he was using here a figure of speech, right? By a banquet, he's trying to say our abundance. So our abundance, we are abundant on so many things. We have so many resources. We can do so much. And these abundances, we shouldn't do trading with them. I shouldn't be giving it so I get something in return. I shouldn't be giving only to those that will be able to repay me in any sort of abundance. So when he says, you will be blessed because they have no means of repaying you, this means that you should not do good with recompense in mind, but for the pleasure of doing it. Many people only invite to their tables those who can invite them back. So many people just share what they have, whatever it is, with those that can give back, right? When the idea is find satisfaction in sharing, in inviting the less fortunate ones, those that do not have that abundance that you have. All right, so we spent good 25 minutes going through all these passages, all these situations in the gospel, right? But the question is, what do we do now? Okay, I understand the idea, right? So what are the things that we can do in terms of charity? And Kardec tells us that there are essentially three ways that we can think of charity. We can do charity by thought, by word, and by deed. So my thinking, my words, and the things that I do. And then you can say, but by thought, Marcos, what are you talking about? How can I do charity by thought? Have you heard about praying? So praying is also a way to do charity. In many situations, I guarantee you, in many situations, people are going through difficult moments, and you're either far away or helping them is out of your reach. So if all you can do is pray for them, that's your act of charity right there. Think of this person or think of this situation. Send your vibrations, send your prayer, and you will be doing your share. We all know now that our thoughts, our prayers, they vibrate. They reverberate through the universe. And they do get where they need to get. So even if it's this tiny, small difference, you will be doing this difference. In words, there are so many ways, right? We can provide good advice. We can use kind words to lift somebody up. One of the most powerful things we have in life is our word. And there are many ways to be charitable with our words, and many ways to not be charitable with our words. right? The use of our word is one of the most impactful things that we have in our lives. So let's be charitable with our words as well. And many, many different actions, deeds. And I'm going to give you some examples. First, right, everybody knows, direct giving, monetary donations. Oh, I can't do that. Let's go down to the list. Volunteer work. Here in this place, we have so many avenues that you can apply your time and energy, and your time is one of the riches you have. Sharing your time, donating your time for those in need is one of the biggest acts of charity that we can do. Supporting causes. It could be human rights. It could be anything. Disaster relief. A couple of weeks ago, fires in California. So many people mobilized themselves to send donations, to send clothes, to send whatever they have. That's another way to do charity. Blood or organ donation, right? If I can build the discipline of every 3 or 4 months, go and donate my blood. If I can put myself in the donation of organs, I'll be saving a life. We don't need to know the people we're helping, guys. Charity can be to anybody, right? Knowledge sharing, teaching somebody, mentoring somebody, tutoring. We can do that pro bono. We can help so many people. The youth today is looking so much for advice, for light. And we, with a little bit of gray hair, can do that, can't we? Wildlife preservation, donating to religious institutions, the list goes on. There's one here that I think is kind of new, and I like it so much, which is corporate social responsibility. Today, companies are actually looking to be an active member of society. They're actually looking for ways to help, right? So if you own a company or if you work on a company, give that idea out. Let's do something. Let's do some charitable work, right? It's a way to change a little bit this heavy face of the corporate America. Crowdfunding platforms. Nowadays, we can help people even, with these platforms online. Well, all those are great and dandy, but there are things that we can do on our day-to-day just by interacting with people. Let's go over those real quick. Act of kindness for strangers, right? Things that are getting out of fashion, unfortunately. Hold the door. Compliment someone. Pay it forward. Somebody did something good to you. You do that to somebody else. This is the hardest one. Let people merge in front of you in traffic. We're always disputing our positions, right? No, it's me. I'm in a hurry. Let me go first. Well, we can be charitable even in traffic. Look at that. So many opportunities that we don't think about. Acts of kindness with friends and family. Send a thoughtful message. How many of us actually say, let me send a message to my mother, let me send a message to my brother, let me send a message to my neighbor or my friend? Check in on a loved one. Are you all right? How are you doing today? Right? So small, so simple, but can make some people feel much better. Help people with chores. I'm overwhelmed. I have so much to do. Let me help you. And that is at our reach all the time. Celebrate small wins. Acknowledge achievements. And one of those that I think is one of the most important ones, guys. Listen. But listen wholeheartedly. Listen with your whole body. Put your phone aside. You want to talk? Let's talk. What's going on? How can I help? Listening can be therapeutical just by listening. Sometimes you don't even need to say anything. This is charity at its best. Offer help at our offices, at our workstations, on a day-to-day. Share resources. Offer help. Express gratitude. So simple. We don't say thank you anymore, guys. Thank you. It's so small, so simple. but it changes the energy around the conversation sometimes, right? In the community, help your neighbors. Share your books. If your books are just dusting, some people could be looking for that book, right? Things that we don't do. Show kindness to a cashier. She might not be in the best day, but we should be kind with that person. Write good reviews. Somebody did a good job, the work was good, write a good review. We could be helping that person in her job, right? And one of those that are new and we pay so little attention to it, be kind online. Your person on a social media has to be integral to who you are. So don't be two people, right? You online, if you are kind on a day-to-day, be kind there too. Don't pick a fight. Ignore those posts that are not aligned to your thoughts. Just keep scrolling. And post good things. Post good vibes. Loving things. That's how we can change the world around us. Now, I chose a very interesting quote to finish our conversation today. This guy just passed, right, a few weeks ago. And I missed that kind of president, to be honest. And I hope he forgives a small adulteration that I did on his quote. And it reads now, I have in this incarnation a chance to make it count for something. I'm free to choose that something. That something, the something that I have chosen is my faith. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I can, whenever I can, for as long as I can, with whatever I have, to try to make a difference. And since I want all of us to go with this reverberating in our minds, I'm going to read this again. Our faith demands that we do whatever we can, wherever we can, whenever we can, for as long as we can, with whatever we have, to try to make a difference. Every time, every opportunity, every chance. It's kind of like a posture, right? It's kind of like an attitude to life that I am kind of like requesting us all to consider. All right? So that's how I close today. And as usual, right, it's followed by a prayer. But I'm going to do something a little different today. Instead of me praying out of improvisation, I'm going to share with you a prayer that I bumped into during the reading of a book. And I think it's deep, profound. So please feel free to close your eyes and just listen to it. Yeah? God, be in my head and in my understanding. Be in my eyes and in my looking. Be in my mouth and in my speaking. Be in my tongue and in my tasting. Be in my lips and in my greeting. God, be in my nose and in my smelling and inhaling. Be in my ears and in my hearing. Be in my neck and in my humbling. Be in my shoulders and in my bearing. Be in my back and in my standing. God, be in my arms and in my reaching and receiving. Be in my hands and in my working. Be in my legs and in my walking. Be in my feet and in my grounding. Be in my joints and in my relating. God, be in my guts and in my feeling. Be in my bowels and in my forgiving. Be in my loins and in my sweaving. Be in my lungs and in my breathing. Be in my heart and in my loving. God, be in my skin and in my touching, be in my flesh and in my paining and pinning, be in my blood and in my living, be in my bones and in my dying, be at my end and at my reviving. So be it. Amen.